On today's Real Talk, I am going to potentially offend many of you. Many of you are going to nod your head in agreement and go, yup, he's completely right. Many of you, who are probably the culprits in this, are going to go, no, no, it's not true. Probably going to happen. So if you find yourself very defensive, that's your litmus test, okay? I'm not trying to call anybody out, but I've been playing this game for 14 years and I've seen a lot of it. So there's another portion of the population here that will realize that they are this way, and there's probably nothing they can do about it because this is just the way they are. There's a whole other portion of the population that will not realize they're this way. They won't even get defensive because they don't know they're this way, but they truly are and will never change. Okay? Enough preamble, I think. What am I talking about? I run Shorehammer Convention. You probably know that if you've listened to more than one episode of this. It's the beginning, the first weekend in December every year. We just announced November 30th, December 3rd in Ocean City, Maryland. That's where Shorehammer is. I like my convention to be completely different from other things. I don't want you to be able to just go, ooh, meta number 3 and print off that list and bring it. Okay, that's why our 40K is a Highlander. That's why we don't allow Lords of War. We don't allow Forge World. There's always been a lot of restrictions on my stuff because I want people to rely on their actual skill in list building and actual tactics, not just, oh, copy paste the meta. Teehee. I don't like that. You can go to any other convention, any other tournament, and copy your meta all you want to the live long day, but you're not doing it at my convention as best as I can help it. Now, there is a caveat to be made here. Sometimes, especially in Age of Sigmar, there are some armies that, like, if you tried to do a Highlander for Age of Sigmar, they have so few units. I mean, 40K players, you may not even realize this. Like, Flesh Eater Courts, they have like probably 6 units and like 6 heroes. That's it. So a lot of times, if you're playing a Highlander, you wouldn't even be able to get to 1,500 points for my tournament if it was Highlander or Fire Slayers. Fire Slayers get 3 units and then like 12 heroes. I've complained about that before. Like Fire Slayers need so much of a revamp and a better depth. Idana Deepkin kind of runs into this as well, where they don't have a whole lot of units. So there are some situations where some armies become basically unplayable because the format. I do understand that. But be sure to be honest with yourself during this conversation and really try to see whether or not you are part of the problem or not for this. Ignoring all of the legitimate reasons why someone may not want to play in a tournament because of format restrictions, such as Highlander or whatever. Like in my Age of Sigmar tournament, I don't allow named characters. Typically, it's just logical that named characters would be a better bang for their buck because they want to sell you on this big, beautiful model, and it's basically the same formula they use for Forge World. Oh, it's unique, it's different, it's a bit more powerful, so you pay more money so that you pay fewer points. It's just business. There's nothing to hate about it, but that's the way it is. So in my Age of Sigmar tournament, there is no named characters or uniques allowed. So you can bring all the generic characters you want, bring any other unit, whatever, but no named characters, no L'Oreal, no Archaon, none of that. And then that changes the complete meta because a lot of the tournament lists for a lot of armies include named characters because they are better bang for your buck. They do all sorts of stuff. So that automatically changes the meta and makes people have to come up with their own list. Or even if they're not good at coming up with lists, they copy and paste that meta list and then they have to take out 300 points in named characters and then go, okay, now what do I put in there? And they have to figure it out themselves. That's my whole point. But there's a lot of people that start whining and complaining. Oh, my army's just unplayable. And remember, we're discarding things like Fire Slayers. They are definitely the outlier. Most armies have enough units, especially 40K, to play something like a Highlander, or let's say it was a tournament with all elites and troops, or whatever the cockamamie restrictions are that you can think of. A lot of people hate change and they hate going out of their wheelhouse. And I have a theory behind that. Let's just start with myself. I don't care to follow the meta. I don't care to spend a whole lot of thought into my list building and the synergies and things like that because I like the most of taking what I want and then figuring out how to win with it on the battlefield. That is the tactical aspect is what I like most. And the people that I know that are really good players have no issue with restrictions in format. I'm talking about your Andrew Hagenbottoms. I'm talking about Leroy Jenkins. He was a 40K champion year before last. A lot of the people that I know that are really good players, not just list builders, but players, have no issue with the list restrictions. And the reason why, I think, is that A, they're a good enough player, they don't rely on the cheesiest of all cheese lists to win. And secondly, they probably are not copying the meta anyway. I know that Andrew typically makes, his own lists that are his own flavor, and they might be slightly, they might have some commonalities with the meta, but they're unique flavor. I know that Leroy Jenkins often goes counter meta. If his Sisters of Battle, everyone's doing Repentia and all this, then he's going to do something completely else and not take Repentia. Now I don't know if that's the case, but you get the point. He'll do whatever's opposite. When Necrons were all shooty and we only had a couple melee units, I love to bring in all melee army of Necrons. People are like, "What is this?" And I'd be like, "Yep, no warriors." Um, so people that are better players and better strategists don't rely on someone else's list, and they don't rely as heavily on their own list building. So in other words, if I say, "Hey, Leroy and Andrew, we're gonna do a tournament, and you can only bring HQs and fast attack," guess what? They'd be like, "Oh, okay." They know that all the other players also can only bring HQs and fast attack. So right there, obviously, some fast attack in HQs would be better than others in different armies, but we're all under the same restrictions. So a lot of times when whenever I played a tournament, I've never had a single issue with whatever restrictions they put on it because I feel confident in my tactical ability. So that brings me to my main point of this conversation is that I feel like a lot of the people that only want to play missions out of the rule book, right? It's that people that me and James make fun of where they're like, "Oh, what mission are we gonna roll? We gonna roll for a mission?" Instead of just making up your own mission. Like, who the hell cares? You can't make your own mission. There's a lot of people, and I know this from experience, the people that want to roll for a mission and they don't want any restrictions on their army are usually the people that are very tactically weak. And that's my thesis. They are not a particularly good player. They rely on other people's meta lists that other people came up with. And then they basically try to keep if you consider like all the synergies and all the machinations of an army, all the rules and mechanics, an engine, all they got to do is keep that engine running and it basically wins itself. And that's similar to like Magic. You can do that in Magic where it's like an infinite discard deck or whatever. You build this engine mechanically, and then as long as you keep it spinning, it just does it on its own. Every time you draw a card, the opponent discards 2 cards. And every time they draw a card, they discard 3 more or whatever. You can just do that if you set it up right. So a lot of these lists rely on cheesiness on the list side and the abuse of the rules because they're not very good players. Now, I see a lot of people and people that you would consider if you don't look real deep into it, because remember I've been playing a long time. If you don't look real deep into it, you'll go, "Oh man, that guy's a good player. Oh man, that guy's a good player." No. What he's doing is he picked all the best things that someone else who's far smarter than him has come up with. He copied that list and now he's like, "Oh, this unit's good at that, so I need to do that." And a lot of these list building things online, they tell you how to run the army. They go, "Oh, well, you bubble wrap the blah 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 with this unit, and then you do this, and you take this spell, and you take this artifact, and you blah blah." I mean, it's spelled out for them. So people kind of get pride, or they get, I don't know what to say, I guess pride, out of winning. But if you didn't really make good tactical decisions, and I'm not going to call out anybody I know, but there are people I know that only bring the cheese, and tactically, if you want to throw them off, change the mission. If you want to throw them off, give a list restriction. If you want to throw them off, just do anything that's out of the norm, and all of a sudden, whoa, they don't know what to do because they are living in this little square house of, oh, GW rules, GW this, I follow GW's abilities they give the units, etc., etc. So tell me what you think. In your experience, now, of course, I may have people comment and go, this isn't right, this isn't. And remember, whoever gets defensive about this probably is not great tactically and falls right into this category. So this may be inflammatory, and I apologize. And it's okay. That's another thing too, is I'm not hating on people that aren't very good at tactics. Like I'm not hating on them. That's a learned and a partially, I don't know, genes or something. It's like partially innate and it's partially learned. So don't feel bad if you're not good at tactics. If you rely on cheese lists, that's okay. I'm not hating on that person, but that is what I've picked up through the breadcrumbs of dealing with people that are like, "Oh, you've got restrictions on your tournament? Well, I'm not coming because I can't bring my 17 mall crushes or whatever." Because that's the only way they can win is the cheese. And I've known many, many people that if anything, like if you actually watch their individual decisions on the battlefield, they make really bad decisions. But they make up for it for having a really good list that they probably didn't make, and then that kind of counteracts it. So I'm not saying there's not a usefulness to that. I'm not saying that bad players shouldn't take better lists, but that is what I've pieced together after all these years. So you tell me whether or not you agree. Are list restrictions and people's hatred for them correlated with people not being very good tacticians or players? And if you feel so inclined to email me for the podcast, pimpcron@gmail.com. And I would like to say thank you to GameAt.eu for supporting the show and panhandle3d.etsy.com. Panhandle3d.etsy.com is who they are. And my beautiful, sexy, slightly moist Patreon patrons. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next week.